Today we're going to be discussing the leader-member exchange theory and how it can affect teamwork in the work. The contents of this project will be a hypothesis review, a literature review, limitations of the studies, suggestions made, the methodology used, conclusion showing implications to the 21st century workforce, and recommendations that would be made. The hypothesis statement of this project is: the closer the relationship between leader and follower when using the leader-member exchange theory, the better communication will be in teamwork. Let's begin with the literature review. First, let's look at the definition of the leader-member exchange theory. The leader-member exchange of LMX theory focuses on the dyadic relationship between leaders and followers. The relationship in these dyadic relationships are considered to be the exchange. Each one of the dyadic relationships can influence the followers' work, their resource access, and their decision-making process, along with their performance. Based off of several characteristics, followers are divided into the in-group that goes above and beyond on work tasks, and the out-group, which only completes duties in the work contract. These dyadic relationships are highly focused on personalities and how the leader and followers get along. Now let's look at the definition of teamwork. Teamwork is a set of interrelated thoughts, actions, and feelings that combine to achieve mutual goals and adaptation to changing internal and external environments. The team aspect of this is a group of individuals who have shared objectives, mental models, and procedures that guide their perceptions, thinking, and behaviors toward a common goal. Let's look at our first study. This study looked at how LMX differentiation influenced followers and their outcomes, and the interactive roles of a person's LMX status and organizational context. This study involved using a sampling created by 261 middle managers and 1,710 organizational members of 34 firms in diverse industries. Middle managers were asked to complete a survey. Middle managers were targeted due to their deep understanding of activities at the management level. These surveys work to capture the leader-member exchange, LMX differentiation, and decentralization of responsibilities. This study found that low LMX members or the outgroup would prefer to work in groups where they at least believe there is a possibility of forming a higher quality LMX relationship. This seemed like it was very important because with the LMX theory, one of the major criticisms is that it is biased. So there would be a question of, would the outgroup want to work harder to raise their level, or would they rather not be in the in-group because of jealousy and issues like that? This study also found that an organization context characterized by cohesiveness and collective action, workgroups with stability and unity can protect high LMX members' work attitudes from being negatively influenced by LMX differentiation. The limitations of this study is that this study focused on predicting the effects of LMX differentiation on employee attitudes. Although the surveys evaluated the employee attitudes as work outcomes, they did not look at different work outcomes such as creativity or performance. Another limitation is that future research should be clear on how the criteria used by leaders to differentiate among followers may affect the way that LMX differentiation influences work outcomes. The next study took a look at leader-member exchange and how it can predict stress that is leader-induced, and also whether coworker support intervenes in this prediction. It is important to note that leader-induced stress refers to stress employees experience that they believe is caused by organizational leaders. This study looked at 620 junior and middle-level employees and evaluated them by measuring leader-member exchange, leader-induced stress, and coworker and social support. The results concluded that LMX very easily predicted leadership-induced stress, and there is no interaction of LMX and coworker support on leadership-induced stress. That being said, there is a strong correlation between coworker support mediating the influence of LMX or leadership-induced stress. Many studies have shown that leaders and followers often do not see eye to eye on their LMX quality. Therefore, most studies only look at one member of the dyad and omit the overall relationship. This study decided to evaluate both the leader and the follower and their actual LMX relationship. This study found that employees were more likely to be engaged with their work, engage in higher levels of organizational citizenship behavior, when they and their leaders agreed on the quality of their LMX theory. Alternatively, if the leader and follower did not agree on their LMX relationship, outcomes suffered. So this is basically saying that if I have a leader that I look up to and I feel like our relationship is very good, they may not feel that way. So whenever that does clash, I'm probably not going to be willing to do the amount of work that I would have done previously. The limitations of this study are that this study could not establish causality by studying positioning, work engagement, and organizational citizenship behavior. In other words, this study looked at the LMX agreement at quality of organizational citizenship behavior, but only did so in one of the three samples. This study also focused on work engagement and organizational citizenship behavior because of its ties to the role theory. Other outcomes are possible that could include job satisfaction, organizational commitment, perceptions of fairness, and task performance. The next study looked at how communication is normally a background element in leadership and management literature, as opposed to being the primary process in LMX relationships development. This study established and interprets the correct level of analysis based on the correlation between LMX quality, leadership communication, and team-oriented commitment in Malaysian participants. This study found that the relationship between dyadic relationships quality, supervisory communication, and team-oriented commitment is strongly connected if followers are encouraged to talk to their leaders about their needs. The limitations of this study were that the study is focusing only on team-oriented commitment instead of including organizational commitment and supervisory commitment. Another limitation to this study is that the current investigation is limited to only Malaysian participants. Therefore, a comparison study between high and low context culture should be considered. The next study evaluated 918 employees to determine if there is a curvilinear relationship between LMX differentiation and team performance rather than only looking at the relationship as positive or negative. A curvilinear relationship was found between LMX differentiation and team performance that showed that LMX differentiation is most likely to be positively or negatively related to team performance. The limitations of this study are that in this study, the cross-sectional design does not allow for inferences of causality. The results showed that the term LMX differentiation remained significant after team coordination was entered. This implied that team coordination partially mediated the relationship. Another limitation is that in this study, the social identity theory serves as theatrical framework due to it highlighting the importance of team structure. That being said, there are many other different choices for creating this framework. Another potential limitation in this study is the extent to which the findings can be generalized to other cultural settings. The next study evaluates whether leader-member exchange promotes teamwork or if it actually hurts teamwork. This study is incredibly important because the LMX theory highlights that bias exists in the workplace between leaders and followers, which may create jealousy. This study showed a negative pattern of relationships between LMX differentiation and our group level indicators of harmony and solidarity. This study also came to the conclusion that the effects of LMX differentiation place leaders and work groups between a rock and a hard place. The limitations of this study are that this study abstracted to a higher level of conceptualization when categorizing operationally distinct group outcomes. Also, it did not utilize research designs that can definitively infer causality among the constructs of the study. The results did not support the moderating role of task interdependence or cultural collectivism. This next study looked to prove that the level of communication frequency between the team leader and the follower will greatly affect the LMX relationship. When the communication frequency is higher, the member will have a larger influence on team decisions. This study found that it is possible for LMX to function as a socialized form of leadership. This can benefit the team that the individual dyad is embedded in by noticing that the member may choose to have more involvement in team decisions. This study also found that different leadership styles have an influence on critical team level outcomes. The limitations of this study is that this study was partially cross-sectional, so no firm conclusions about casualty could be drawn from it. It seems that future research would also benefit by evidence linking supervisor rate measures of innovation to objective measures. Another limitation of the study is that there is not a test of mechanisms linking the LMX to member influence of team decisions. The next study showed that a positive LMX relationship is positively related to a follower's job performance. This is because having a higher LMX relationship is known to increase a follower's work engagement. By engaging employees through the LMX theory, it seems that employees will have a higher level of energy, may be more enthusiastic, and may be more inspired and proud of their work. This study was completed by surveying 950 Dutch police officers. These officers were asked to fill out the LMX questions by keeping in mind one specific leader. This study provided information explaining that it is important to train leaders to have listening skills, to spend time talking to each other, and to share expectations. By completing these tasks, it is possible to increase the quality of the LMX relationship, resulting in better job performance. The limitations of this study are that it is a cross-sectional study, so there are concerns regarding casualty. That being said, the results fall in line with other motivational process study results. A second limitation is that the police officers filled out self-reports only, which can raise concern about a common method variance. The next study looked at the popular more is better thought of communication, and if it's true in organizations. This study found that depending on the organization, there was a different level of communication needed. This study also found that followers had a strong desire to be communicated with formally rather than through informal channels. This creates an atmosphere where there are less rumors and more of a consistent result. The next article explained that it is beneficial for a leadership team to understand the identities, relationships, and organizational culture of the teams they are leading. By doing this, they will be able to enhance reflexive forms of communication, which will increase communication by leaders in a way that the group is comfortable with, which can increase team communication. So some of the suggestions that were made were one of the criticisms of the LMX theory is that it backtracks on the inherent rule that everyone is equal by creating a biased environment in the workplace. It seems that a study should be completed that really outlines if being in the outgroup causes jealousy in between followers. One study did show that followers in the outgroup were more likely to help in teamwork if they thought they had a chance of making their LMX relationship stronger. That being said, this study did not really show how the workplace bias affects the relationship between followers. It only showed this follower wanting to get higher instead of the actual relationship in between somebody in the in group and in the out group. Another suggestion that can be made is that it seems that several studies look at the amount of communication that a leader has with a follower and how it impacts the amount of productivity of the follower. It seems that a study needs to be completed that correlates the amount of communication between the leader and the follower and the amount of communication between the follower and the group that they are working in. So basically, having a direct correlation that shows not only the communication between the leader and the follower, but whenever that is increased, how does it increase the follower that communicates with a group? Another suggestion that could be made is that it seems that most studies look at dyads as individuals and not necessarily as a cluster of dyads. It seems that a study that looked at how a leader relationship with a follower could affect another relationship would be beneficial. The LMX theory is known for being biased, but one could question how the thoughts of one follower that are known to the leader can affect another relationship between the leader and that other follower. So, in other words, if I have a relationship with a leader at work and I do not like another employee, and I explain my frustrations to that leader, how will me explaining that affect that relationship that that leader has with that other person? Another suggestion that can be made is that one study showed that communication was stronger between a follower and a leader when they agreed on their LMX relationship and how strong it was. It seems that a study should be completed to look at psychological contracts and the impact that they may have on the LMX relationship between a leader and a follower. By understanding the impact of this, it may be possible for the leader and follower to come to an understanding, which can in turn increase the amount of work being completed. So I feel like this is a huge part of these dyad relationship or the dyadic relationships. And it comes from, in my head, we might get along and have a really good relationship, but that also builds a psychological contract in my mind of where we are. And so if you don't have that same psychological contract, then we're going to butt heads. We're not going to get along. Another suggestion that can be made is that one study showed that formal communication is desired rather than informal communication. LMX relationships seems like they would primarily involve informal communication since they focus on the individual communication between the leader and each follower. A study should be completed that examines the amount of informal communication that occurs in an LMX relationship with formal communication within the organization. This should also look at how much correlation is between the formal communication and informal communication in a workplace that utilizes LMX leadership. What methodology is going to be used? This research student will do a large literature review of different studies that have been done on both communication and teamwork and the leader-member exchange theory. The results will then be cross-examined to show the correlation between the differentiation of the LMX theory and the amount of communication that exists in teamwork. Conclusion showing implications to the 21st century workforce. So I'm going to go ahead and say this ahead of time. Whenever I started looking at the issues in the 21st century workforce, I realized that the LMX theory kind of solves these in the same ways. So I'm going to go through just a few big ones that I saw. The first one is the age gap. And one of the emerging issues in the workplace is the age gap that exists in the workplace. By having a large age gap in the workplace, there is a gap in employee abilities. For instance, a senior citizen is less likely to want to learn a new job or new responsibilities. Studies on the LMX theory have shown that by having a quality LMX relationship, that employees are more likely to be more motivated and to complete job tasks. So by promoting leaders to build stronger individual relationships with followers, the followers may be more motivated to learn new tasks. So in my mind, the LMX theory really comes down to building these relationships and noticing where these relationships have holes in them. Because if you are able to fix those holes, then you're actually going to build up your workforce to where it's doing more. Another conclusion showing implications to the 21st century workforce is the gender pay gap. This is a huge issue. It seems like being aware of the LMX relationship and the bias that comes along with them will allow management to track the gender pay gap in the workplace. It has been shown that followers with a higher quality LMX relationship are more likely to be more motivated, which in turn is going to promote communication. Therefore, by acknowledging this issue and communicating a solution or explanation to the follower, it seems that LMX relationship will become stronger. I said that communicating a solution or explanation, it's really just being aware of the problem. Making sure that the employees know that you're aware of the problem and that you see it and that you're trying to fix it. It's really the basis for what needs to be implied in the 21st century workforce is noticing and being aware of what's going on. Because if you can get employees motivated to work harder, you are going to solve a large amount of problems. When looking at recommendations, this research student would recommend an organization looking at the LMX relationships that exist between leaders and followers in their relationship and also looking at the communication that exists in between followers. This will allow the organization to highlight out-group followers that may have potential to become in-group members by simply creating a higher quality LMX relationship through communication. Another recommendation is, as previously discussed, job motivation and production can be greatly damaged when a leader and follower have a different point of view on their LMX relationship. This research student would suggest having each follower sit down with their leader and discuss their expectations and what the leader and follower would like to see change. By doing this, the leader and follower should have a similar, clear view on their LMX relationship. This also manages the thought of a psychological contract and not allowing that to be the basis of the relationship. Even though it can still be part of it, it's not going to be your solid basis. Another recommendation is that this research student would suggest evaluating employees and deciding whether they are in the in group or the out group. By doing this, leadership will have a clear view of which followers would make a good team. Previous studies have shown that out-group employees are likely to work well in a team with in-group employees because they believe that they can increase the quality of their LMX relationship. So this again goes back to just being aware, knowing which employees need that push, knowing which ones don't, knowing which ones need their relationship built up. You're going to get so much work done out of this. You all, I hope that my PowerPoint and my graduate research project really helped you understand the LMX theory more and how great and how much opportunity it has when you look at teamwork and combining them, and how communication can also boost the relationships within the LMX theory. Thank you for listening to my project, and I cannot wait to see yours.